And for more on how the Chinese currency is moving towards internationalization this year, we're joined by Caroline Owen, Regional Head at RMB Solutions. Caroline, good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Caroline, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone was launched in September of last year. It's now a year since the launch. How has that helped in promoting the internationalization of the RMB?
Well, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone really is the laboratory that the Chinese regulators are using to test all sorts of reforms as it heads towards full currency convertibility. And it's really important that they use this controlled environment to test the changes so that they can review the results of these changes. They can make changes before rolling them out to the rest of the country. So I think it's a very systematic and prudent approach.
And have we seen much progress in the internationalization of the currency a year into the Shanghai Free Trade Zone's launch?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you just look at the statistics. Renminbi is now a top 10 currency in terms of world payment. It's one of the top 10 most actively traded currencies in the foreign exchange markets. So yes, it definitely is having an impact.
Well, as you say, the yuan is the 7th most used global payment currency. However, it still only accounts for about 1.6% of all world payments. Is that surprising, given China's status as an exporter and its role in the global economy?
Sure. Well, despite all of this, internationalization and success that they've been having, really, China's economy is not quite matched by the use of renminbi in world trade or investment. When you look at the statistics, 2 really is the magic number. Less than 2% of all world payments are made using renminbi. And that should be really surprising to all of us because China is the largest exporter in the world. It's the 2nd largest economy. So one would expect that over time, those statistics will change.
So with the effort to internationalize the RMB, what is your projection for it in, say, the next 5 years or so?
Sure. Well, as we head out to 2020, we're going to see more convertibility. And it's things like the Shanghai Free Trade Zone is where we're going to be testing towards that track. We would expect that in the next 5 years, the currency would be used more for trade and potentially one of the top 5 world payment currencies.
Well, in the meantime, Hong Kong is still the largest offshore renminbi hub outside of mainland China. Recently, we did see clearing banks established in London and in Germany. That's had a significant impact in Europe. How likely is it that we'll have a clearing hub established here in the U.S.?
Well, we're seeing a lot more demand for renminbi products and services right here in the U.S. I think most people are probably unaware of just how much U.S. companies really are incorporating the currency into their businesses. So over time, we could expect there could be more demand for all kinds of banks to get involved into this internationalization.
But with the U.S. and the dollar potentially being threatened by the renminbi, do you think that the U.S. would encourage a clearing hub here?
To be able to provide renminbi services and products, you don't necessarily have to be having, say, for example, a clearing bank. But I think over time, it's going to be a benefit for everybody here in the country. If U.S. companies can use the currency to become more profitable and put more Americans to work, well, then I think we'll all benefit.
So what would you say then is the biggest obstacle to the internationalization of the renminbi?
Well, the renminbi internationalization is really about cash flow. So one concern that market participants will have in the offshore market is that of liquidity. But already we've seen 25 central banks put in place current bilateral currency swap agreements, at 2.7 trillion renminbi. So they are providing that backstop of liquidity.
Is the fact that it has a soft peg to the dollar a concern?
I don't think so. I think what we've seen in the offshore market is that market participants want to hold this. That's why we've seen the offshore renminbi bond market really blossom over the last 5 years.
Well, many are saying that the whole idea about internationalizing the renminbi is part of a campaign to position it as the next global reserve currency. Is this really an inevitability?
Well, you might be surprised to know that it is actually a de facto reserve currency right now. Over 40 central banks are actively investing and gaining access to renminbi right now. So over time, will the IMF add it to the basket? Most likely, and then we will really know that we've truly reached internationalization.
At what percentage of global currency usage do you think it could be viewed as the next global reserve currency? At the moment, as we saw in the previous chart, the US accounts for 40% of all trade, followed by the euro and then the pound in 3rd. As we said, the RMB is in 7th position at just under 2%. So at what level of percentage does it need to hit for that to sort of become an established notion?
Well, when you look at the percentages and you look at the currency rankings, all of the other currencies are actually already in the IMF's basket. What's really holding the currency back from being recognized as an official reserve is because it's not fully convertible. So once we get full convertibility, then it's likely the IMF will include it.
And what moves is the PBOC doing to attain this full convertibility?
Well, they're testing out all kinds of reforms. As much as they're making it easier for the currency to move back and forth across the border, they're doing a lot of reforms in the mainland, such as reforming interest rates, reforming interbank liquidity, and FX management, foreign exchange.
All right, thank you so much for your insight and expertise. We're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you.
Caroline Owen, Regional Head at RMB Solutions.